Hey everyone, Matthew Labosco here from the Vitality Program and Arena Method. And today I am going to cover probably the thing that I've addressed the most over the last 20 years when it comes to the body, and that's good old low back pain. And so what I want to start with here with you today is I want to name to you the 3 reasons that you don't have back pain. These 3 reasons I have found over the last 20 years where most people spend their time trying to cure their low back pain. And I'm going to tell you that over 90% of the time, they have nothing to do with your low back pain, especially primarily. I'm not saying they can't play a role, but I'm telling you these 3 things are not the thing you want to look at first, okay? So the first reason why you do not have low back pain is because your core muscles are weak. This is one of the big ones. I need to strengthen my core and that'll fix my back problem. No. When I would work with people with low back pain, this might be the icing on the cake that we would address their core strength, etc. But when I find people go here first or make it a priority at all in the beginning, it's a big hit and miss. And the other problem when core musculature weakness is focused on, some of the traditional exercises are given to strengthen your core. The most classic one is your crunches or planking and this bracing experience that happens in the trunk. And this comes from the ideology that if I keep this still, that it's more stable. And I'm not going to get into that too much today. I might mention it a little bit when I explain how the spine works later in this video. But this whole idea that I need to strengthen this, and that's the thing that's going to help me with my back pain, I would say it's like saying, oh, the way to fix this leak I have in my pipes is to duct tape the pipe. I guess it can be helpful, but you're not solving the real problem here. The second reason that does not explain your low back pain is that your back muscles are tight. This is the next biggest rabbit hole that I find people can fall into when trying to help their low back pain. The most classic thing that I would get at my clinic and what I would caution people against is when they have low back tightness or stiffness or pain, the instinct is I need a massage here, right? The idea that this tightness is here and massaging it will make it feel better, maybe not. And here's what's really important. A muscle can display as tight, show tightness for 2 reasons. One reason why a muscle can get tight is because it actually is incapable of lengthening, meaning it's mechanically stuck. That's a tissue that would benefit from massage, that would benefit from particular types of stretching. But the more common thing I see with low back stiffness and pain is it's not mechanically tight, meaning the muscle isn't saying, I can't move, I'm stuck. What the muscle's actually saying is, I don't want to move, it doesn't feel safe. That falls into the category of protective tightening. And so if a muscle is protectively tightening itself, the last thing you want to do is go in there and start to mobilize it, start to move it. So rabbit hole number 2 is my back muscles are tight and I need to massage them, I need to stretch them to get out of my low back pain. And the last reason that does not explain why you have low back pain is different back pathologies. Okay, this is probably the most popular of the 3. I would get people in my clinic all day long and tell me that, well, I've got back pain because I've got herniated discs, I've got disc degenerations, I've got spondylolisthesis, I've got this, I've got that. And I'm not saying these things can't contribute to discomfort and low back pain, but out of, I would say, 100 people that I've treated with low back pain that came in and said, I'm in pain because of these pathologies, 90% of them, that wasn't the reason why they were in pain. I have one gentleman I remember to this day that came in and brought me his x-rays. And he's like, hey, Matt, I need you to help me with my back pain. Look at my x-rays. And if you looked at his x-rays, you would be like, wow, dude, there's nothing I can do to help you because according to the pictures that I'm seeing of your x-ray, your back is in shambles. What I said to him, and to this day, actually not too far into the past, he actually called and he said, Matt, you remember what you said to me when I came in with my x-rays and you know, I thought we were going to talk about it. I said, no, but I could guess. What I said to him was, well, that's nice. We're going to put those aside and we're going to actually look at the function of your back with the rest of the system. And so the reason why I say that herniated disc, disc degeneration, and other pathologies don't necessarily mean that's the reason why you have pain is because the traditional model is always looking for something to blame. So if you look hard enough, or if you take x-rays, and we have an ability to see stuff at levels that we've never been able to see before with these incredible scans, which have a place, don't get me wrong, but man, we see this, I see a herniation, that must be why you have back pain. I would say 90% of the time, if not more, it has nothing to do why the back's in pain. That's the result of a dysfunction that's occurring that I'm going to talk to you here in a second. So if those things are not why you have back pain, then let's talk about why you do have back pain. And I would summarize it in one simple explanation. The reason why your low back is hurting is very simple. It's being asked to do something it wasn't designed to do. That's it. Okay, so what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is it's being asked to take on forces and loads that it mechanically wasn't designed to take on. Okay, so what I'm going to do here next is I'm going to kind of show you exactly how the lumbar spine works, what it's really good at, and what it's really not good at, so that we can start to understand why it's being asked to do things that it wasn't designed to do and what to do about it. Okay, so I have my little spine here, and so I want to just kind of break down some basic anatomy with you. And so you've got the lumbar spine, which consists of the sacrum. Sometimes you've heard the term S1, which is basically just a geographical location. So you've got S1 right here on your sacrum, and you got L5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so this makes up your lumbar spine. And then you have your 12 thoracic vertebral bodies, your thoracic spine, and then you've got your cervical spine, which is seven segments in your cervical spine. What's really important to understand about the lumbar spine is let's talk about what it's really, really good at, okay? The first motion that it really excels at and is actually most efficient at is called flexion. So flexion is when it goes this way. It's when you move in this direction. This is called flexion of the spine. So I'm flexing the spine. Its ability to flex is about 60 degrees flexion. So if this is 0, I can go forward 60 degrees. Okay, that's a lot of range of motion. Okay, so the lumbar spine is really good at flexing. The second place it has capacity is an extension. So extension means it goes back. So extension is when I go this way. And so what you can see is when I go into extension, these spinous processes here, the spine of the lumbar processes, they approximate each other in extension. So you see that? They approximate each other when you extend. When you flex, they dissociate from one another. Okay, and that's going to become relevant in one of the exercises I'm going to show you here that I would recommend if you have any kind of low back pain. Okay, the other plane that your lumbar spine has a capacity to move in is lateral flexion, which is basically side to side. So its capacity is about 25 degrees in lateral flexion. So it has an ability to go side to side about 25 degrees. So it's relatively capable in lateral flexion side to side, okay? Now, the plane I want you really to pay attention to here is the rotational plane, because this is where the lumbar spine struggles the most, and it's where the lumbar spine is compromised, and why the lumbar spine has the dysfunction it has is because it's limited in its capacity to rotate. So if you look at all of the lumbar spine, okay, all the way from S1 all the way to L1, if you summated the rotational capacity of each one of these segments, you're going to get a total of anywhere from 13 to 16 degrees of rotational capacity, depending on which literature you look at. 13 to 16 degrees of rotation is almost nothing. And so it's not good at rotating, not good at twisting. This is where the lumbar spine can be most compromised, all right? Now, what's really, really fascinating about the human body is if you find an area that's not good at something, just look adjacent to it and you'll find that its neighbor is really good at it. So as an example, if we look at the lumbar spine and notice, oh, you're not good at rotating, not good at it. If we go to the neighbor, we're going to find a neighbor who's really good at rotating. So guess who the neighbor to the lumbar spine is? You guessed it, this unbelievably capable hip socket, which is a ball and socket joint. So this ball and socket joint is incredibly capable, not only at rotating, but it's also really good at flexing, right? Look at that. That is amazing, isn't it? Look at that flexion, right? It's really good at rotating. I can rotate through this joint. And what does my spine get to do? It gets to go for the ride. Yeah, that's what it's designed to do. And then it also has this incredible ability to come in and out, to laterally flex, to abduct or adduct, as the bone motion is called, right? So what's the key and the primary reason why people have low back pain? I would say the number one reason that I have found over the last 20 years why people have low back pain is because, like I said, the spine is being asked to do something it wasn't designed to do. And what it's being asked to do is the job of the hips. If for any of you that have watched my how to sit to avoid low back pain video, I get into this a little bit, that because we sit so much, we restrict the motion in our hips. And so our body's constantly adapting to the positions we're in. So if I sit all day, I'm kind of gluing this joint. Like the tissue start to adapt to this position. I start to stand up. I have a hard time extending through the hip. I have a hard time rotating through the hip. So now all of a sudden my low back is being asked to do all this excessive extension, rotation, and now my low back is cranky. The thing I'm going to show you here in this video is I'm going to give you two exercises. One is a mobilization and a stretch for the hip joint. And the other is a movement that synchronizes the hips with the spine. Because the key to a healthy spine and healthy low back especially is teaching the hips to work with the back, okay? What you have to understand is your sacrum, which is kind of the foundation of your spine, it sits in your pelvis, right? It sits in your pelvis. Many of you have probably heard of your SI joint, sacroiliac joint. So your iliac crest, your iliac bone is right here. A joint is where two bones meet. So your sacrum meets your iliac part of your pelvis, and so it creates your sacroiliac joint, okay? So is there some movement in your SI joint? Yes, but very, very little, right? Very little. And what's really important to understand here is wherever the pelvis goes, your sacrum is going to follow. So what do I mean by that? If my pelvis bone goes forward, where's the sacrum going to go? Forward. It doesn't have a choice. If my pelvis opens up, rotates to the right like this, where's the sacrum going to go? It's going to go in that direction. It has to follow the pelvis. Well, guess what? If the sacrum's going forward, guess where the lumbar spine wants to go? It wants to go forward. It wants to go with everybody else. One of the things I used to say in my clinic is when you're moving, leave no body part behind. Bring everybody with you, okay? And this is the exercise I'm going to show you is how to synchronize hip motion with spine motion so that they're working as a team, because motion creates stability. Back to my point from the beginning. Keeping everything stiff and still does not create stability. Motion creates stability. It's how you actually turn on the system. So let's take a look at those two exercises. So the first mobilization I want to show you that you want to take a look at is the ability for that hip to rotate. Okay, so one of the key things to take pressure off of the demand of that rotation from the lumbar spine is to make sure your hip's able to rotate. And so this stretch, especially when you do it comparatively one side to the other, is a great one to know how to do and to know how to assess. Because if this is restricted or there's a big difference between your right and your left, this is definitely a place to start on your journey to helping the low back function at a higher level and eliminate discomfort. So what you're going to need is basically something that is about, we'll just say maybe desk height, a table high. The higher the table, the more intense the stretch. All right. Some people have used their bed, or some people use the base of their bed if they could put their foot up on it. I've had clients use the back of their pickup trucks if they can, if it's not too high. But what you want is something that is about waist high or lower to start. If you can get it waist high, that's a good place to shoot for. It's a good height to try to be able to do this stretch. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to approach the table, okay, and kind of square yourself to it. And now what's most important about this stretch is making sure that you're not compensating. Okay, one thing about the body is it's always looking to follow the path of least resistance. If your hip is actually tight and restricted, then you need to understand that we're about to do something and we're trying to go into the path of most resistance. So if we're doing that, we need to be aware of the escape routes of the body, meaning it tries to go into the low back because that's the path of least resistance, which is why your back hurts to begin with. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to stand right in front of the table or the thing you're putting your foot up on. You want to make sure that down leg is nice and straight, okay, meaning the toes are pointed straight. They're not turned out. They're straight or toed in. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your leg and you're going to swing it up onto the table, okay? It's also a good idea to have something to hold onto because if the body doesn't feel stable, it won't give you motion. So having something to hold onto is a good idea here. It can be anything. Take a look on my YouTube channel because I show you how to do this stretch in a doorway at home, okay? So it's another video that can teach you how to do this. But what you want to do is foot straight, and you want to make sure that when you put your leg up, that your knee is in front of your belly button. You want to make sure this is lined up, okay, and that your knee isn't outside here. A lot of people will do a stretch like this, but they're compensating by they're putting their leg out to the side, and now that knee's not in front of their belly button, so they're missing the intention, which is to create motion at the hip joint. You're picking up motion where you already have motion, okay? So you want to cross that leg over so that the knee is in front of your belly button. You want to do your best once you get in this position to take a look at your foot down there, because most likely, if this is tight, your foot, in this case, my right foot, probably turned out. Okay? Again, that's a compensation. So you want to do your best to keep that foot straight, maybe slightly toed in, and then you also want to make sure that your knee is straight. Okay? You don't want that knee to bend. Once you're in this position, you may already feel a stretch here on this, in this case, my left butt cheek. Okay, so straightening my right knee so that my knee is locked straight and just supporting my knee here and maybe just preventing it from going down. That's the other thing I see people do with this stretch is they push down on this. You don't want to necessarily pull it up and over. You just want to prevent it from falling down. And if anything, think about drawing it in towards you, okay? You don't have to go crazy with that, but that's kind of the feeling. You want to really pack it in here. And then what you're going to do from this position is you're going to straighten your right knee out, in this case, the leg that's on the ground, and you're going to bend the knee that's up, okay? So the combination of those two things will start to create a big stretch in your butt here. And what are we doing? We're stretching all that tissue that once it's lengthened helps to rotate that hip better, which again takes some pressure off the back, okay? And again, you hold this for maybe 30 seconds, okay? I also like to oscillate in the stretch. So what does that mean? I'll start to bend my knee till I start to feel a stretch here. And so I'll call that the beginning of the stretch. and then I'll go in, and then I'll come back to that start point, in again, and then back. I oscillate in the stretch. I don't go into the stretch and then come out of the stretch. So I'm moving that tissue, I'm mobilizing that tissue in that zone where I'm already in the stretch. Now, so important to pay attention to, I just did it on my left hip, compare the other side. See, this side for me, I could already feel it, is tighter, okay? This is the side I have to be more mindful of stretching. So same thing, left leg's on the ground in this case, pointed straight, making sure my knee is in front of my belly button, supporting my knee here, okay? Making sure my knee is straight on the ground, and then I'm going to bend my right knee to go forward, making sure my left knee stays straight. And boom, I got that big butt stretch on my right side. Again, holding these stretches for about 30 seconds, 30 to 60 seconds is a long time if you're getting in there properly. It's intense. We're really getting into the deeper structures of the hip. Phenomenal hip stretch. So now, once you do that, like I said, pay attention to which side is a little tighter. You're always looking for symmetry. So if you feel like one side is tighter, so in my case, my right leg crossed over was a little tighter than my left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a 2-to-1 ratio right to left until there's balance in the hips, and then I'll start doing them the same. One thing you got to understand here is that if you come into any kind of stretch routine, especially something like this, and you're starting out of balance, meaning one side is tighter than the other, you don't want to stretch the same on both sides because you're still out of balance. The goal of this type of mobilization is to create as much symmetry in the system as possible, especially when we're talking about the hips, and especially when we're talking about the hip-supported lumbar spine. We don't want asymmetrical loads going through the spine, especially torsional. That's why some people have a herniation more to the left, herniation more to the right. That has everything to do with the imbalance of the hips and that force distribution coming up through the lumbar spine in an asymmetrical fashion, which throws the disc in one direction more than the other. So when you're doing this stretch, pay attention to side, and just do a little bit more on the side that's tighter than the one that's looser until you start to balance. All right, great. So after you do this stretch, we're going to do this next movement. Okay, so this next exercise is probably one of the exercises I've leveraged the most for people that have low back pain. I have actually prescribed this exercise to people and have done nothing else for them, and it got them out of pain and sustained the pain as long as they continued to do this and strengthen this. They were done. I literally had somebody come in who was ready for surgery, like really not sure what to do with their back pain, and they were being told all kinds of things. During the consultation, I showed her this exercise and haven't seen her again for low back pain. Still know her, still engage with her, but her back pain's totally better. So this is very powerful. Again, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but it's extremely powerful because this exercise literally reinforces to the system what it was designed to do. And it's called a movement squat. Okay, so a lot of you guys are probably familiar with what I call exercise squat. An exercise squat usually requires, was designed because of this load on the shoulder. So if you're going to put a load on the shoulders like this, then there's a way you have to align the spine and the hips and a certain amount of flexibility needed to accomplish this task. But it's super artificial and really is not that useful anywhere except the gym. So if I lock myself into this position, right, I have to kind of pitch my hips forward on a spine that's going to go into extension. So then I got to strengthen, like this is where strengthen your core and suck this in and hold this and all this stuff. And you're trying to counteract this very unnatural thing because when you go into a squat, your hips or your pelvis is tipping forward, yet you've got this load on your back, so you can't flex the spine. That wouldn't be good. So you got to keep the spine in extension. And this is where you run into problems. Okay. So I'll show you this with the skeleton. Like I said, and when you're squatting, your pelvis comes forward, right? You go into that lumbar. So watch what happens to to the spinous processes here when I bring my pelvis forward. So when I take my pelvis and tip it forward, I actually approximate those vertebral bodies here, okay? Obviously, if I approximate them too far, I can compress them, right? That's what compression fractures and all these things happen, is when these vertebral bodies basically go on top of one another and keep smashing in on one another. And because of the load on the back, not only is the pelvis rocking forward, but I have to keep my spine up and back. And so I've got the top of my spine going in this direction and the bottom of my spine going that direction. So I'm putting myself into a compromised position under load. Okay, so if you don't have a strong core to counteract that we'll call it non-optimal position, you're going to get a problem. Now we know why when people do heavy weightlifting, they wear a belt. That's called intelligent, because it's a compromised position. So like I said in the other video, if my pelvis goes forward, my spine wants to go with it, right? My sacrum wants to go. L5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is this beautiful synergy of motion. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody's happy. And if you can imagine the muscles that attach from each vertebral body and all the way up the chain, if you think of muscles like rubber bands, and I properly tip my pelvis over to roll over this ball and socket joint, I'm lengthening all these strong muscles, the hamstrings, the glutes, and it's almost like a suspension system where I'm putting tension through here, right? Like a giant rubber band lengthening, and everything continues to sequence. Now everybody's going forward. All the tissues are lengthening through the chain, which allows me to return home safely, okay? That's what I mean by a movement squat. And the reason why I call it a movement squat is because it's something that you'll probably do in life. A movement squat means a squat movement that actually looks like life, like going down and pick something up. Okay, now here's what's important about a movement squat. The key to this squat is that the spine follows the pelvis. Okay, so if my pelvis tips forward, right, if I stick my butt out a little bit, allow that weight shift, and you'll start to kind of feel the weight moving towards the back of your feet here. Okay, you don't want to go into your heels and pop a wheelie with your toes, but if you just tip forward, you'll start to feel like a little weight shift to kind of the middle to back side of the foot, right? Middle to back side of the foot starts to take a little load there. The hamstrings start to lengthen, right? You're loading this posterior chain like a giant rubber band. And then the spine wants to go forward. It wants to go with the pelvis. Now, one of the keys is, a cheat is, your spine also follows your eyes. Okay, so if I look down at the ground, there's more of a chance that I'm going to flex my spine. We want the spine to flex, guys. We want the spine to flex. We just want it to flex on a hip that's flexing. So the way this is going to look is I'm going to initiate this motion by sticking my butt out a little bit and feel that weight shift in the feet. And the reason why I'm bringing your attention to the feet is because you got to think of your feet like plugs. That's where your power comes from, okay? It's where the ground reaction force is. It's where we get that return of force energy from the gravity and ground reaction forces coming together. That's a force. And so we want to take that force and we want to distribute it through the chain. And so we want to leverage the feet there because we're grounded, okay? So I've got my feet plugged into the ground. I stick my butt out a little bit, feel that weight kind of in the middle to the back of the heel, towards the heel. And then I'm going to look at the ground and pretend like I'm going to pick something up, okay? You'll notice that my spine is flexing, my butt, my hamstrings. I'm not doing with my knees straight. My knees are slightly bent. And as I go down, I drop my hips a little bit as I go down to pick the thing up. My eyeballs are looking at where I'm reaching. Now, the key to getting up is you want to get up by pushing the earth away from you. You want to push into the ground with your feet and get up from the bottom up. Okay, so I'll show you that again. I'm going to drop down, stick my butt out. Okay, if it's more comfortable, you can put your hands on your thighs and you can kind of slide them down here while you tuck your chin. Stick your butt out. Feel the weight in your feet. Feel the weight loading in your feet. Okay, I'm down here. A lot of times people will report this feels really good because what you're doing is you're stretching and pulling and decompressing the spine. Now the key is on the way up to drive through my feet, okay? And I want to stand up from the bottom to the top, okay? So my pelvis brings my spine up. I'm pushing through the ground to stand up. I'm not pulling myself up. This is what pulling myself looks up. So I'm down here. This is pulling myself up or getting up from the top down. See that? This is pulling myself up. As soon as I initiate with the spine motion, I'm literally using my spine to bring my lower half up. Super inefficient. And again, your spine's not designed to do that. Why would someone have an instinct to do that? Because like I said, if you sit a lot, you've been training the spine to move on a hip that doesn't move. So it starts to move without the hips. This exercise, the movement squat, helps to put it back together. So one more time, dropping down, sticking the butt out, feeling the weight. You want to feel it here. And it's good. Smack your butt a little bit. Like get the sensation that your butt's turned on. The butt turns on through flexion. This is where this gets loaded. As I go down, and I can go down to where I'm comfortable. What's really important is that you're allowing your head to come down, you're allowing your spine to flex, and then you're pushing through your feet and standing up tall, okay? If you're only comfortable going this far, that's fine. Just get comfortable with your feet underneath you, okay? So important that you're using the feet to help create the reaction up the chain. Now again, the hip mobilizations that I gave you should help to clear some of the runway for this, okay? And this exercise of the movement squat is a way to coach the motion with the spine. At the end of the day, what keeps your spine healthy is going to be when your hips are working with your spine and they're coherent with one another. They're working together. All right, so if you have any questions about this, please leave some comments down here below. Let me know if it's helped you, questions, things to clarify. And please stay tuned to my YouTube channel. Make sure you're a subscriber because I will continue to go into more details about this and give you more exercises and mobilizations to open up these hips and take you through some progressions on our movement squat. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video.